Land back.
Land back, y'all.
Hey, welcome to the Revolutionary Movie Trap.
With your faves.
I know, right? It's like, hold on, is this the book trap? No, this is the movie trap, y'all, where we do political education via the cinema. All right, so
the film.
Yes, full circle. Come into the room. When you get into this movie chat, make sure you are liking the video. Make sure you are commenting on the video, and make sure you are. Last thing, Sundiata, make sure you are
that video. Share it everywhere, y'all. Every group. It's a free movie. Ain't nobody going to the movie theaters anymore, right? This is your movie experience now, and we're gonna be commenting just like it's in the movie theater, so you're not missing out at all. We're gonna learn a lot of great stuff. So share it so everyone can get this political education. It's necessary.
Yes, exactly. You want to share because we want to take political education away from the people. You know, our colonial schools, sometimes we get that one teacher that teaches us something that's really important about our lives, right? That one colonized teacher. Sometimes we get that person that's on the street corner who is waiting for you on the bus and is giving you some political education about your history that you never knew. You can get political education from so many different places. And it is wrong to take that political education away from our people. And so this is a way for you to send political education to people that you know in your life. Maybe they don't know a lot about Marcus Garvey. Maybe they heard some things about Marcus Garvey that ain't true, right? So let's make sure that we are sharing this. We are live on Facebook and on YouTube at Black Hammer TV.
Beautiful.
So yes, keep on sharing this. And if you know someone who ain't doing nothing tonight and needs something to do tonight, they can watch a movie. So go ahead. What you snacking on today for today's movie?
Okay. So I got some Pringles.
Okay.
I gotta have the crispy chips, and I got some Welch's fruit snacks too. A big thing of water because we gotta stay hydrated, y'all. These workouts, shameless plug, these workouts, 8 a.m. or 8 p.m. every, most weekdays. Come to them. You can drink a lot of water. That's what we got. We're gonna have some dinner later, but that's my cinema snacks. What about you? What do you got? What you got on deck?
I got my water. That's what I got. I got my water to stay hydrated because that's the main thing. I'm gonna get plenty fed as political education. Although we do need to be fed materially, so that's why it's important to get resources for our people because our people need more than ideas. They need a material change in their lives too. As if you don't know, my name is Chief Oju. I'm representing the nations of Africa and Boriken. I am working class with a little bit of petty blue fries because of that college education, goodness gracious. And I use he, him pronouns, and I am the chief of agitation propaganda. And who is my lovely co-host?
My name is Sundiata, y'all, and I'm the chief of defense training and our defense apparatus here at the Black Hammer organization. I am representing the petty bourgeoisie who is committing to overturn that contradiction by uniting with the colonized, poor, and working class masses, by committing class suicide through our actions, through our service to the masses, and through our political line, and really trying my best to be the revolutionary that all the people need. I'm repping the African nation as well as the nation of Turtle Island, and I use he and his pronouns. And I'm super psyched to be here for another dose of Garvey.
Yes,
I want it all.
Yeah, it's more Garvey, right? We've been reading Marcus Garvey for Black August, for the Revolutionary Book Trap. Put hashtag Black August because Black August ain't over yet. It ain't over yet. And so why don't you drop hashtag Black August up in the comments? And yes, we have been we have been hosting this book for all this month. And you know what? We still have another chance to learn more about Marcus Garvey because Marcus Garvey is the leader of the largest anti-colonial organization ever to exist. And so, yes, and today, we are going to have one special guest, or actually one set of special guests, to discuss this movie with us today. Who was our special guest?
Where they at?
Ooh. Hey!
Land back.
Hey, how y'all doing? Want to introduce yourselves?
Yeah.
Land back. My name is Chief Yabe. I represent the nations of Africa and Pachamama by way of Colombia, and my class is working class with petty blue fries as well, and my pronouns are she and they.
And back.
All right, I am Chief Fatih. I represent the nation of Africa by way of Nigeria. I am petite bourgeoisie, but committing that class suicide constantly. And I use they, them pronouns.
All right. Lay back. Yes, spit on that petty. Spit on it. Yes. Love it. All right. Yeah, no, we were so glad that you joined us to talk about this movie today. What are y'all excited about to learn about learning more about Marcus Garvey? What y'all excited about today?
I know me. Are you asking them? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm asking our special guest.
Okay, I'm sorry. I won't cut it. Go ahead,
Commit that class suicide. Let our special guest speak first. Go ahead, special guest. Go ahead. Let us know.
Laying back, I'm really excited to learn about like Marcus Garvey's like personal life, but also like just like the full breadth of the UNIA. I feel like there's just so much to it. It's been such a big organization, and like just like the history everywhere. I just want to learn all of it from this.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, same here. We've been reading this book for the book trap for so long, so it'll be really great to, see these moving pictures, right? To like get a really good sense of what it was like to kind of see it in action. And there's so many things that apply with, how Marcus Garvey was treated, and things that were going on in the UNIA and the machinations that he was dealing with, and today's time periods. I'm really ready to see how those two just connect, and just I love connecting the dots and going, oh, aha. So yeah, we're gonna find a lot of that in here. I'm back.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm excited too. What are you excited about, Sundiata? Nah.
Thank you for asking, Chigoju. Yeah, no, I'm really excited to see the faces of these African people, right? To really look them in the eyes, even if it is, through this sort of aged medium, because I think as an African, right, you have to feel such an immense amount of pride when you think about the UNIA, when you think about Marcus Garvey, right? You think about red, black, and green, and it's something that has been so erased, right? This unity, this pride of being African has been erased and turned into like this proud to be African American, right? Proud to be Black, right? Black Lives Matter, right? That's really all it's become. So I think being able to really feel that, because it just feels so good when you're reading it, but to see the people's faces. I've had a couple of glimpses of the documentary, and I just want to see more and see how proud our people were and how proud we deserve to be.
Yes, no, I totally unite with that. Like right here in this room, we have people representing Africa in all forms of Africa, right? Like from Pachamama to Tehran to the continent, like everything right now. And that's exactly what Marcus Garvey was uniting, right? I mean, Marcus Garvey was uniting all of our people because he understood our liberation was connected. Our liberation was connected, and not just as Africans, but as colonized people. And so, again, make sure you are liking, make sure that you are sharing this. Make sure you are commenting, hashtag shared when you shared it. And share this in groups. Give someone something to do on this Thursday night. They probably just got home from the plantation, and then, maybe they're trying to watch some bad colony TV. Let them learn a little bit about a revolutionary hero instead. All right, so we're going to get into it. We'll stop the film every so often in order to discuss a little bit about what we've seen. But yeah, make sure that you are still commenting as the film is going. And we're going to get into this documentary of Marcus Garvey. And so, laying back, make sure you all are still sharing this live as it goes. All right. So, laying back, we'll see you all in a second.
Take part in one of the biggest parades in New York's history.
As a young boy, to see my father in the parade was one of the greatest things in the world. I would be right there to see him put on his tunic, and I loved to see that sword that he carried. It really made me feel very proud of him.
Mills was one of 100,000 black people marching under the red, black, and green flag of the Universal Negro Improvement Association. The world had never seen anything like it. It was all the work of one man, Marcus Garvey.
Every window that you looked at, people's heads were out to see the Marcus Garvey parade. Most of them wanted to see Marcus Garvey. And he was very well decorated, his hats and the feathers, but he drove always in his automobile, sitting back.
At the age of 34, Garvey claimed millions of followers worldwide. His controversial goal, to create an independent black nation, made him one of the most powerful people in America and one of the most hated. The federal government targeted him as a threat to national security. Rival black leaders denounced him as a lunatic and a traitor to the race. But Garvey may have been his own worst enemy.
He wasn't one to take advice from others kindly. He made his own decisions, and he would rise or fall by the decisions that he made, because he was a supreme egotist.
Volatile and secretive, yet charismatic and visionary, Marcus Garvey changed forever the way black Americans looked at themselves and the world.
He started something that became bigger than Garvey himself. He, more than any other figure in the 20th century, symbolizes the turning of the perception of black people into something positive. Garvey's father was a mason, a professional mason. And among the things that he did was to create tombs for people in the St. Anne's Bay graveyard. He took Garvey with him to the graveyard one day, and they were digging this grave, and his father had Garvey go down inside the grave, but then he pulled the ladder up and left the child in the bottom of the grave. Garvey said that he cried out and his father wouldn't let him get back up out of the grave. He wanted to teach him a lesson.
Alone in the grave, young Marcus Garvey learned that he could rely on no one but himself. It was a lesson he would carry for the rest of his life. Marcus Garvey was born in August of 1887 in St. Anne's Bay, a small town on the northern coast of Jamaica. His father, who had been born a slave, withdrew from the family for days at a time and insisted his wife and 2 children address him at all times as Mr. Garvey.
My grandfather was a very stubborn man who had to have his way, who he was quite retiring to. He used to, the strange thing about him, he used to have his own little apartment off the main house where they lived. And he would be by himself there, reading a lot. Now, if you look at it, the thing, Marcus Garvey was like that himself too. He liked to be by himself.
Marcus obviously inherited many of his characteristics. Marcus Garvey's father was repressed in many ways, a frustrated person, a person who could find no way out, and seemed to have internalized much of the feeling that the world was against him.
Garvey's mother raised crops and, like many women of her time, cooked for a white family to support her own. But Sarah Jane Richards wanted more for her only surviving son than a life of common labor in the banana fields.
Garvey's mother had tremendous influence upon him, and she had great hopes for him. She wanted, in fact, to call him Moses, and she thought that he was going to do great things. That source of love, that someone, his mother in particular, loved him, helped to create that extraordinary self-confidence that Garvey had.
As a boy, Garvey imagined himself delivering speeches to adoring crowds. He spent hours reading, and even bet his friends they couldn't pick a single word from the dictionary that he didn't know.
The young Garvey had ambition. He wanted to get out of St. Anne's Bay. Later he said he dreamt of becoming the first gentleman in the world. And it seemed as if he early on developed this interest in a kind of dramatic, epic story of himself in which he would play a leading part.
But Garvey's grand ambitions were tempered by reality. As children, blacks and whites mixed easily in his community. One of his closest friends was a white neighbor, Joyce Reary. But as they became teenagers, her father put an end to the friendship.
At the age of 14, she was sent away to England and told never to speak to him because he was a nigger. And he said that's the first time that he heard and became aware of this idea of being black and what it meant. He felt shut out. He felt that he was excluded and made to feel that he was not good enough. And the rest of his life was really an attempt to prove that he was just as good as anyone else in the world.
Under the colonial education system, Garvey was forced to leave school at the age of 14. He became a printer's apprentice and quickly earned the status of master printer. In the print shop, he learned the power of controlling the written word and would soon publish his first newspaper, Garvey's Watchman. In 1910, 23-year-old Marcus Garvey set out on a journey through Central America. Supporting himself as a journalist and laborer, Garvey saw black workers harvesting plantations, loading ships, and building the Panama Canal. They were the power behind the economy, but in their isolation from each other, black people were powerless. In 1914, he came upon the book that would change his life.
Marcus Garvey's reading of Booker T. Washington's Up From Slavery was an eye-opener to him and pointed the way to his conclusion, which remained with him throughout his life, that the situation facing black people was a global one.
I was determined that the black man would not continue to be kicked about, as I had seen in Central America and as I had read of it in America. Where is the black man's government? Where is his king and his kingdom? Where is his president, his country, his men of big affairs? I could not find them, and then I declared, I will help to make them. My brain was afire.
As he sailed for home, Garvey's grand vision for himself and for the world clicked into place. He would unify black people scattered across the globe, and he would be their leader. Back in Kingston, He attended a debate and noticed an attractive 17-year-old named Amy Ashwood. When Ashwood took to the stage and delivered a powerful political speech, Garvey knew he had found a kindred spirit. He approached her later that evening as they rode home on a trolley. "At last I have met the star of my destiny," Garvey exclaimed.
Her parents were very opposed to it, particularly her mother, who was trying to keep her away from Garvey because Garvey didn't seem to have a solid income or be the type of person that she wanted her daughter dating. But Garvey was a great romantic, and he announced to Ashwood that she was his Josephine.
And she says, "If you are my Napoleon," and they make a pledge that they would remain together and forge what would become the Universal Negro Improvement Association. And they launch it together in August of 1914.
With the motto, "One God, one aim, one destiny," the Universal Negro Improvement Association stressed race pride and sought backers for an industrial training school, modeled on Booker T. Washington's Tuskegee Institute. Garvey and Ashwood attracted a small, loyal following, but there was trouble from the beginning. Garvey created enemies by attacking established leaders. He wouldn't tolerate the slightest dissent from UNIA members, and he was a disastrous money manager, using contributions to the school to pay for his own living expenses. When his few supporters clamored for an accounting, 29-year-old Garvey decided to leave town. He hired himself out on the crew of the SS Talek, and in the spring of 1916, he left Amy Ashwood behind and set sail alone for New York City. His ideas had failed in Jamaica, but they would find new life in America.
Harlem is a throbbing, bubbling, exciting place. These are fantastic buildings, apartments. The street life is abundant. This is a fast-moving and a very affluent world, and it's a whole new world.
Garvey quickly found lodging with a Jamaican family in Harlem and got a job as a printer.
He was not a wealthy person, far from it. Living in a sort of a hall, little hall bedroom, the kind of bedroom that was very popular in Harlem in those days. So he was in pretty poor financial shape. But the idea that he had, this great desire to build a great movement, sort of sustained him.
A. Philip Randolph, editor of the influential Messenger magazine, heard about the young agitator from Jamaica and arranged for Garvey to deliver his first formal lecture in the United States. Garvey printed his own handbills, referring to himself as the Honorable Marcus Garvey. He painstakingly rehearsed his speech, just as he had as a boy. But when Garvey rose to address the audience, his confidence shattered. He spoke with a tremor and shook like a leaf.
It seems that Garvey was anxious, he was nervous, he was heckled. He, at one point in his address, lost his balance and fell off the stage, fell into the audience. He literally fell on his face. What he had hoped would be a great sort of coming out turned into this humiliation.
Crushed by the failure of his American debut, Garvey wandered into the Tabernacle Church of Reverend Billy Sunday, a white evangelist who attracted massive crowds to revival meetings.
Billy Sunday was the granddaddy, the man who really created the 20th century revival figure, revivalist preacher figure in the United States. Garvey quickly takes on Billy Sunday's speaking style. Very athletic, very intense, moving a lot, and Garvey would refashion his oratory in keeping with the model of Billy Sunday.
With renewed confidence in his power to move an audience, Garvey set out for a year-long tour of 38 states. His mission was still to raise money for a vocational school in Jamaica. But along the way, Garvey got a first-hand look at the contradiction of race in America, the stunning potential of the most affluent black population in the world, alongside the degradation of Jim Crow and the horrors of lynching.
When we'd walk along the plank walks, they didn't have sidewalks here in New Orleans at that time, but you'd walk along the plank walks. But if a white person came along, no matter who it was, a white child, a white man, a white woman, if they came along, you had to get off the plank walk and stand in the mud until they passed.
You was oppressed and depressed and disgusted that you were born in the wrong race of people because of your color. Whatever was left, that's what you got. Only what was left. And we were at the lowest ebb at that time. The black people was.
On July 2nd, 1917, just months after America's entry into World War I, the city of East St. Louis exploded in the worst racial rioting the country had ever seen. 39 whites and hundreds of African Americans were killed.
You have black troops going off to fight to make the world safe, democracy in April, and in July you have black people being murdered in the most wanton and barbaric manner in East St. Louis, you know, children being thrown back into flaming houses, people being boarded up in their houses before they're torched. So even by American standards, East St. Louis was a horror.
W.E.B. Du Bois, leader of the NAACP and supporter of integration, led a silent march in response to the massacre. But to Garvey, this was no time for silence. It was time for black people to get together and fight back. He spoke out at an emergency meeting in Harlem.
The whole thing, my friends, is a bloody farce. That the police and soldiers did nothing to stem the murder thirst of the mob is conclusive proof of conspiracy on the part of the civil authorities to condone the acts of the white mob against Negroes. White people are taking advantage of black men today because black men all over the world are disunited.
It is that speech that marks the turning point of Garvey away from Jamaica, away from a preoccupation with matters related to the West Indies. And now he's not looking for support for what he is hoping to accomplish in the West Indies, but rather he is now sucked into the vortex of American race relations.
Garvey is deeply suspicious of the efforts of white liberals and of their black peers to bring about the integration of blacks in the United States. He, as a matter of fact, doesn't believe that it's possible. He does not believe that white people can represent the best interest of black people.
Garvey opened the first American division of the UNIA in September of 1917. Just as he had in Jamaica, Garvey distinguished himself by calling established black leaders weak and self-serving.
Even though I had a great deal of admiration for W.B. Du Bois and A. Philip Randolph and other black leaders of the time, I thought that their approach to our problems was too doggone tame, and that we needed to have that attitude of Marcus Garvey, that stand up on your feet and be ready to defend your manhood at all times.
And all of a sudden, this golden voice from the Caribbean came and stood on the corners in Harlem and began to talk about self-esteem, holding up your backbone, you know, no wishbones. And Mr. Garvey gave them hope that there was a dream for black people.
Garvey told black Americans that their history did not begin with slavery. Africa's glorious past was also theirs to claim, he said, and people who had once done great things could do them again.
Garvey's message was revolutionary because at that time, it told black people that they had to unite. They had to come together as one and believe in their roots, that they came from something greater than they were told. To begin with, Africa was called the Dark Continent. And the pictures that we got of Africa in those days were cannibals running around in the jungles, putting people in pots. Garvey changed all of that.
I am the equal of any white man. I want you to feel the same way. We have come now to the turning point of the Negro, where we have changed from the old cringing weakling and transformed into full-grown men demanding our portion as men.
He left the impression that the only way there could be a difference in the way black people of African descent could be treated would be for them to have a powerful nation of their own.
Garvey toured the country again, this time initiating UNIA branches in big cities and small towns. Sunday meetings of the UNIA soon attracted thousands. A Garvey meeting was a day-long family affair, half political rally and half religious revival.
The first time I went to a Garvey meeting was a Sunday afternoon in November of 1919. It was the first time I had heard the message of the UNIA.
The day I met Marcus Garvey was one of the most exciting days of my life. It was filled with anticipation from the earliest part of the day, because I knew that I was going with my father to meet Marcus Garvey.
And when Garvey came in the door, everybody stood up in one accord and said, "Speak, Garvey, speak." And it was just like a hush on the room.
He said that the pen is mightier than the sword, but the tongue is mightier than them both put together.
Before addressing the crowd, Garvey would inhale through a perfumed handkerchief to focus his concentration. The man who once shook like a leaf on stage could now hold an audience spellbound.
When he spoke, it was as if you were speaking yourself. It was not like somebody speaking to you, but like he was you, or you was he. And it just was a connecting link, and it was something like fire, like lightning, like something that went through everybody at the same time.
Be as proud of your race today as our fathers were in the days of yore. We have a beautiful history, and we shall create another in the future that will astonish the world. I can advise no better step toward racial salvation than organization among us. We have been harassed, trampled upon, and made little of because of our unfortunate condition of disorganization. Our racial program of today is a united, emancipated, and improved people.
Garvey took black folk who were assaulted by a variety of very unfortunate and negative images of themselves and made them believe in themselves, made them see physical beauty in themselves, made them see the need to interpret and write their own history. In that sense, Garvey sold the Negro to himself.
With 35 cents, a photograph, and a pledge to support Garvey's nation-building program, any person of African descent could join the Universal Negro Improvement Association.
I saw the light, I saw the light, Mona, I saw the light, I saw the light from the heavens.
Garvey's genius was to transform cooks, maids, and workmen with the pride that comes with a title and a uniform. Always think yourself a perfect being, he wrote, and be satisfied with yourself.
You would almost see them metamorph into something else. You would see it. They'd suddenly get very tall. Because the smallest man in the uniform still looked like a giant. I can tell you that from experience. They were gorgeous. The black men were gorgeous.
Jacob Samuel Mills, a master carpenter from St. Kitts, had come to Harlem in 1910. But barred from the All-White Carpenters Union, he could only find work as a janitor.
My father joined the Garvey movement because he thought it was something for the advancement of black people. And every Sunday afternoon when he was through with his work, he would put his uniform on. He felt very proud when he wore that uniform. He would wear it on the trolley car and let everybody look at him and talk if they wanted to talk. But that was Captain Mills.
The effect of the uniform on everyone who saw it was electrifying, but especially on white people. I heard white women fainted. When we had the big parades going down Fifth Avenue, they would just fall out.
Land back. All right. We taking a pause right there to talk about what we saw. If you are just tuning in, we are watching Marcus Garvey, a documentary. This is the Revolutionary Movie Trap from the Black Hymn Organization. Welcome. Yes. Woo, we already learning about the beginning of his life, and I mean, as we see, so of course, we can see the colonizer that made its way into this documentary making, right? But we can also see Marcus Garvey's life for what it is, because as revolutionaries ourselves, we see the patterns, don't we? I see the patterns. Like, one thing that I'm noticing is just how Marcus Garvey is. He is a scientist. He's a scientist. He wants to see what can get him closer to his people. If the way he's speaking isn't working, what can I do with how I'm speaking to make sure that my people are listening? If where I am is not getting to the masses of Africans where I live, like in Jamaica, where can I go to get people to listen? Like Harlem, right? It's just that it's not that he's not doing it out of the sake of where can I go for me to be somebody. He started this with his first wife, like they started together, and they're like, where can we go so we can get out a message? And I think this documentary tries at first to make it seem like he was like like a con man trying to like wander and find something, right? And try to find a place to settle as a con man. But no, like as you can as history points out, it's like the people he was calling out as like sellout leaders. He was a true leader who was uniting people. What did the people who met him say? They said like he was the first person to unite people. If you ain't uniting people, I don't know what those other leaders were doing. What were they doing if they weren't uniting people? I don't know. But yeah, Sundiata, what you thinking so far about how they talk about Marcus Garvey? Ooh, hold on, you gotta start one more time.
Sorry about that. I really unite with what was being said in the comments and what you just said. Like they don't have respect for colonized revolutionaries on the base level, right? Like they make it seem as if they're failures, right? Like their lack of perfection almost, right? Like a lot of y'all will sit in the crowd and laugh at a dude who gets up there and tries to preach to his whole race and is nervous and then falls down. But none of y'all will get up there and try the exact same thing, right? So framing it in ways that really slander him, but it's very obvious he still shines through, right? The material always shines through, and that's what we all have to understand, because in every documentary, whether it's Stalin, whether it's this, whether it's a book, right, they're gonna put your haters in it, right? Like Du Bois, we can talk about that later. Because that's another part that the book does, for instance, Marcus Garvey's vision of Africa does that exact same thing. It's because these colonial media apparatuses, right, like the documentary industry, right, like is made to continue the propaganda of the CIA, right, of the colonial nation, of keeping colonialism active. So it's important we realize that, and we were able to take what we know using our own dialectical experience, using our political line, our principles of unity, and interpreting everything through that. And we can get a real clean picture of Marcus Garvey that we know and love as the revolutionary we have to learn a lot from.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I unite with that. Hey, Yabe, what you thinking so far about Marcus Garvey? What have you internalized? Oh, wait, one more time.
Lamb back. Yeah, this has been a great start of the documentary. I'm really like seeing like so many, like parallels to like other like revolutionaries throughout history. Like I heard like them talk about like just how Marcus Garvey saw like the African like poor and working class like digging up like Panama and like splitting this continent for the white people, and and just made me think of like just like the arduous struggle we have to all fight as revolutionaries, and like just thinking about how like this whole thing is a struggle, and like there's this struggle of like every time I call a new comrade, I'm always like we're a revolutionary organization, so we got a lot of haters, and that is what struggle like results in. You really separate. You make people make that decision. You unite with the people. You unite with the colony, and just seeing him like hold fast to his leadership, and seeing those like as I said, like loyal followers like really fall in with like the revolutionary like people's movement that UNIA was, and like just seeing how much pride it gave people who were just spat upon. Just really beautiful to see, just like the roots of that, and then, how it's inspired so many people today, even. But land back.
Yeah, no, I was like really inspired. It was so beautiful seeing all the photos of all the applicants, right, and all their applications. Because revolutionary organizations often ask everyone to apply and like give like just provide information about who you are. Why do you want to be in this? And you saw all the photos. It was for just 5 cents and like pledging your loyalty not to him, right, to the cause of the organization, right. And to be a part of that, building that vision, and that's all you needed. There was nothing special you had to be, and it's just beautiful to see all of those beautiful African people from around the world signing up for that. Fatih, what you thinking about what you're seeing right now?
So much between knowing I didn't know that Marcus Garvey, the first time he spoke had those issues, right? And to see someone at the first time that they had spoke to have gone through that and still was like, I need to change this. I need to get to my people. I need to, say what I need to say. And the drive, the revolutionary drive to do so is just so amazing, right? And it's just one of those things that we talk about all the time, like, regardless of, what may be going on, you may get up and you may stumble, right? But like, centering the masses, right? The poor colonized working class masses, and understanding that struggle, understanding, the toiling that has been going on for hundreds of years, especially so, coming so uh, uh, close from, being enslaved. And, I one of the things that I really just, love is just the unity, right? It's actually one of the reasons why I first joined Black Hammer, is understanding that, like, um, that unity that Marcus Garvey had with Africans in Pachamama doing that work, Africans, in Turtle Island, and the way that they were oppressed, and saying, you know what, no, it's everywhere. We are being oppressed everywhere, and everywhere we need to. Everywhere we need to do something about it, right? And that's what we do here. We unite with the poor colonized working class masses all over the world, because we understand that it's that same boot, right? Whether it be the United Kingdom, whether it be the Snakes, whether it be Canada, like, we understand that these places, currently, have their boots around our neck, and we unite together, right? We unite all colonized people to overturn that. And just seeing that first contradiction of, like, oh, like, there's these classes of Africans, and they're living in these different situations, however they're still being treated the same. And understanding that it was the white man, that the division of the white man, that was the that kind of linchpin, and why there wasn't that organization. And just kind of like like moving dialectically through it. And he was really truly a revolutionary scientist. It's just great to just see it in action, iterated.
It's amazing to see Marcus Garvey to identify, the problem of the colonizer, of colonialism, of like the white man, right, getting in the way of people, but then also not like being liberal, being a scientist, and seeing what else is getting in the way of people uniting. And it's these sellout leaders who do nothing. And we heard from the people, like the person who met him was like, hey, I respected these leaders of their community, but they didn't do anything. Right? He just said they didn't do anything. We needed someone who stood up, because our people were getting killed by the hundreds in these race riots, right? And these mass lynchings, and these like mass like genocide moments in our history. And so it's just amazing to see Marcus Garvey be that person, and like the first person. Again, without Marcus Garvey, there would have been Malcolm X. Like Marcus Garvey knew how to talk on a corner, right? Marcus Garvey knew how to orate in the auditorium. Who else knew how to do that? It was Malcolm X in Harlem on the speaker's corner. Harlem only respects people who can speak on corners. That's all they respect. They don't respect nobody else that's all in a suit or whatever. They only respect the people who can speak on the corner and bring people. And if you didn't do good enough, you were gone. Yes, it's just amazing to see just history show like how right Marcus Garvey was. And so, in the meantime, we're going to, raise some resources. We want to, make sure that in the spirit of Marcus Garvey, that we understand that doing things for our people requires resources. And so we are asking for you to donate or to pledge to helping support our work, whether it is building Hammer cities, whether that is doing our PPE and mask work on the ground, whether it's giving our food to our people, but not in a way just to give it to them, but to win into organization, which was what Marcus Garvey was doing. Chief Sundiata, what's our goal tonight?
Land back. So our goal is $400. That should be light work, right? That should be really light work. I mean, if you was gonna go to a movie theater and watch this and get a large popcorn, that's already almost half that amount. So we can raise this money easily. I know with the power of the colonized brilliance, all the gems that Garvey is dropping, thinking about him as a figure, not necessarily just the documentary. We can really understand that we have to build this now, right? We have to build material impact for our people on the ground today. So for instance, right, if you hear some crinkling, some plastic moving around me, it's because, you know, our headquarters right now is in factory mode, putting together packages of PPE, putting together packages with granola bars in it, because tomorrow morning, 5 a.m., it's on. We have to meet the masses where they are at, right? And that's not something we can just do freely, right? It can only be done by the support, the y'all, you know, supporters, right? Colonized people who are members, as well as the reparations corps. I don't think I've seen them yet. I don't think I've seen them yet tonight. And our reparations corps as well. You need to be donating, right? Raising this money, bringing the loot back, right, from your ancestors who stole it from us, and putting it towards a new future, right? A new future that starts tomorrow when somebody gets a granola bar and a mask and is safer, right? And is fed for just a little bit longer when they go to work, right? That is where we need to be, right? So I appreciate seeing all of the
yeah, got some donations
coming in. Let's keep it up, y'all. And I want to see big numbers. It's a small goal, so we need to see big numbers because we smash our goals here at Black Ham. Land back.
Land back $30 from
Okay.
$20 from Red. Hey, got $4 from Ama. Much appreciated. Much appreciated. Land back. Yeah, no, yeah. Keep on donating, because as one thing we learned from Marcus Garvey as well is that, you know, they're gonna say any kind of story they can about what raising resources means for liberation, right? Because the colony only understands resources as something to be used to further the colony. So when you're getting resources together to do something else different than that, they're like, what you doing? How can we prevent people from understanding that they can use the resources in a different way? And what they do is they be spreading lies, they be spreading rumors, all that kind of nonsense, right? And so, you know, like this work that we do is serving the masses directly, right? And this is exactly what Marcus Garvey was doing. Like here what it says: serving the masses requires discipline and leadership. Exactly what Garvey provided to millions of Africans, and exactly what Ghazi and the ICC provides thousands of colony masses worldwide today. And that is correct, fully correct, right? Because our commander-in-chief, right, Ghazi Koto, is understanding that we have to make sure that we are dialectical, that we are disciplined, and that we understand the contradiction and who our friends are and who our enemies are. Because you know what? That's not a lesson that just comes from now. That's a lesson that comes from history. We see that with Mao. We see that with Ho Chi Minh. We see that with Marcus Garvey, right? And yes, we learned that we can't keep a revolution from the masses. You can't. And so we'll keep on doing what we're doing. And I want you to keep on donating to Cash App or Venmo, #BlackHammer.org. And that way we can get the resources that we need to, meet our people on the trains. Like how many masks did we get out last week in Atlanta?
I want to say it was like 289.
Hey,
we're going higher this week.
And going higher
every week. We got to serve.
And our people were loving it, because you know what? They're tired of just going to plantation and not getting any kind of motivation just to keep on with their day. No one wants to go on a plantation at 5 a.m. No one wants to do that. No colonized person wants to do that. And so that's why.
I have to be corrected. 469.
Hey, okay.
We going up. So
only up from there. See, it just keeps going up and up. Only up from there. Oop, yeah. We got another $15. And thank you. All right, well, keep on donating, y'all. We're gonna get back into the movie because you know what, we're gonna get back into the movie because it's gotta learn more about Marcus Garvey. You gotta learn about a figure that we thought only existed in the 1950s and 60s, but was out to get Marcus Garvey too. And you'll see just how long white power was working to undermine the liberation of African colonized people. So we get back into it. All right, sit back, enjoy the next part of the Marcus Garvey documentary, y'all. Man back.
There was the African Legion. For young people, the Juvenile Division. And in the Black Cross Nurses and the Universal Motor Corps, the Garvey movement offered black women a place of their own.
We wore this uniform everywhere. That was a physical statement that these uniforms and plumage made to the rest of the world that we are Garveyites and proud of it.
I saw light, Mona.
My father at one point said that the organization would have been able to develop farther and faster if we had more women in the organization in comparison to some of the wimpy men that we had.
With its elaborate rituals and official songs, Garvey's UNIA was a separate world. Members pledged allegiance to the red, black, and green flag, which Garvey himself designed as a symbol of a black nation in the making.
Show me the race or the nation without a flag, and I will show you a race of people without any pride. But that was said of us 4 years ago. They can't say it now.
Ethiopia, the land of our fathers, thou land where the gods love to be, as storm clouds suddenly gather, all armies come rushing to thee. And then the chorus went something like that. Advance, advance to meet the foe, let Africa be free. That's, women would sing that, and men would reply, advance, women, advance to victory. Men, advance, advance to meet the foe, advance. And everybody, with the might of the red, the black, and the green, advance. With the might of the red, the black, and the green.
In the summer of 1918, Garvey set out to create a separate economy of black-owned businesses. First, he purchased a half-finished church building for use as UNIA headquarters and christened it Liberty Hall. Relying on the printing skills he'd learned as a boy, Garvey started the Negro World newspaper with a cover price of 5 cents. The paper carried essays, poetry, and articles on black history and world events. On the front page of every issue was a long editorial penned by Garvey himself. He distributed the paper with the help of Amy Ashwood, who had made her way to New York a year earlier. Then, to attract the dollars that flowed through black hands, Garvey created his first of many investment funds.
Garvey was aware that blacks had contributed to the war effort by purchasing over $220 million worth of Liberty bonds. And this contribution to the war effort indicated that there was some wealth within the black community in the United States. And his idea was that this black wealth should be converted into businesses that would benefit blacks and projects that would benefit black people.
Garvey's idea of the UNIA was that it would teach success. It was going to be a vehicle to communicate and demonstrate that black people could be successful. This idea of success was now translated into a whole series of commercial ventures. Laundries, restaurants, newspapers.
Garvey financed UNIA enterprises through the Negro Factories Corporation, which was capitalized with small contributions from his followers. At their peak, UNIA businesses employed as many as 1,000 people in Harlem. But UNIA businesses quickly began to flounder. Garvey hired managers with little or no experience. He shifted funds from one company to cover mounting losses in another. And he insisted that his followers play by his rules. When an early member of the Harlem branch challenged his leadership, Garvey physically assaulted him.
Garvey was very authoritarian and very anti-democratic in the way he ran his organization. His primary concern was in loyalty, not in competence, because he does not attract around him people who are particularly competent and they therefore would not tell him or try to stop him from using those monies to finance other endeavors in the UNIA.
In October 1919, resentment against Garvey boiled over. A disgruntled investor named George Tyler pushed his way into UNIA headquarters, where Amy Ashwood was now working.
Amy Ashwood didn't really want to let him in. He seemed disturbed. Garvey came forward, said, "What do you want?" Whereupon George Tyler pulled out a gun and began shooting. Amy Ashwood threw her body between the shooter and Garvey to protect her lover. George Tyler said, "I don't want to shoot you," trying to aim around her. She tackled Tyler and they tumbled down the stairs to the first floor. As soon as the shots were fired, the people on the first floor had called the police. The police came, they apprehended Tyler and took him to jail in Harlem. And the news reports were that Garvey had been shot in the head, and it made a huge news splash.
And that moment becomes the turning point, because Garvey survives 3 shots. The next day he had a big speaking engagement in Philadelphia, and he goes to Philadelphia in spite of the fact that he's been shot. He's bandaged, but he goes and makes his speaking engagement, and he now has this extraordinary sort of quasi-religious significance. He survived. He's invincible.
By the end of 1919, Garvey claimed over 750,000 followers, and the Negro World was the most popular black newspaper in the United States. But his rising influence would soon make him a target of the federal government and a growing number of black critics who called the UNIA a house of cards. The war powers descended on Versailles to make peace and redivide colonial territories. From the seat of his self-styled empire in Harlem, Marcus Garvey argued that it was time to give Africa back to black people. Some said it was a ridiculous fantasy, but Garvey's slogan, "Africa for the Africans," reverberated around the world as his movement spread through the colonies. In Europe, Garvey began to be seen as a threat.
The United States had worked with the British government during World War I, and they continued that after World War I with a focus on Garvey, because the British government was deathly afraid that the Garvey movement was going to spread revolution. They feared the hundreds of thousands of the masses of blacks under his influence. And undoubtedly, Garvey did stir up nationalism.
I say this plainly and for everybody to hear. We are organizing to drive every pale face out of Africa. Do you know why? Because Africa is mine. Africa is the land of my fathers. We who make up this organization know no turning back. We have pledged ourselves even unto the last drop of our sacred blood that Africa must be free.
Garvey's Negro World, now published in Spanish, French, and English, carried news of rebellion around the world. In Africa and the Caribbean, colonial authorities banned the newspaper. But with over 500 divisions of the UNIA in 22 countries, Garvey's message could not be stopped.
The Negro World was being smuggled into Kenya by seamen, black seamen, and then it would be read aloud to groups of people around this reader, plus young children, young boys in particular, who were charged with memorizing Garvey's editorial in the Negro World. So it would read out, and then these young boys would run off, having memorized it, run off to the villages and spread Garvey's word in that way.
In the United States, black troops returned from World War I with high expectations for change. but they returned to a country that was not ready for equality, a country increasingly suspicious of radical political movements. In this unsettled climate, Garvey's appeal to disgruntled African Americans with military training sounded an alarm.
Attorney General Palmer decided that there needed to be a special division of the Justice Department. He called it the General Intelligence Division. And he picked a young Justice Department attorney. He was really unknown at that time, but must have been known enough for his diligence, and his name was J. Edgar Hoover. Garvey really gets pinpointed. Hoover, the Justice Department, were clearly hooked on a fixation on Garvey, which would before long become a vendetta.
J. Edgar Hoover wrote to a colleague, "Garvey is a notorious Negro agitator, affectionately referred to by his own race as the Negro Moses." Hoover's agents were in the audience at Carnegie Hall when Garvey bragged that the UNIA would soon be strong enough to exact its own form of justice.
When those crackers lynch a Negro below the Mason-Dixon line, since it is not safe to lynch a white man in any part of America, we shall press the button and lynch him in Africa.
The agent reported that Garvey's address was met with great applause and much excitement. J. Edgar Hoover had long relied on casual informants, but now, in his determination to go after Garvey, Hoover hired the first full-time black agent in the Bureau's history.
He was known by a code number. All his reports were signed 800. That was his code. And his job was to go into Harlem and to infiltrate the Garvey movement, to try and find evidence that could be used to build a legal case for ultimately getting rid of Garvey. Garvey rejected America. They could no more agree to and accept a militant rejection of America by blacks than they could accept a militant demand for full inclusion by blacks.
Just as the government campaign against him escalated, Marcus Garvey unveiled a new business enterprise. It was his most ambitious venture, but would prove to be the most fateful.
Get on board, countryman, get on board, lazy none, get on board, countryman, wine home on the Black Star Line, wine home on the Black Star Line.
The idea comes to Garvey that black people need a shipping line. And he bases his idea on the fact that the Cunard family has the White Star Line and the Irish have the Green Star Line. And he says, why shouldn't blacks have the Black Star Line? So it is a vision of grandeur.
Black people were routinely Jim Crowed on ocean-going liners. Black folk paying, say, for first-class accommodation often had to travel in third-class accommodation. Black people on ships had to eat after the white people had finished eating. So all of these problems Garvey was trying to address through a shipping corporation.
His ships would carry more than passengers. Garvey envisioned commercial trade among black communities around the world, with produce, raw materials, and manufactured goods transported on UNIA vessels.
The Black Star Line was in some ways Garvey's Empire State Building. It was this monument to black commerce in the same way that the Empire State Building was this citadel of white capitalism. And it represented the ability of black people to seize the day and to have their own economy.
Garvey offered Black Star Line stock for sale in 1919, promising his investors liberation and large profits as they slept.
My parents spent a small fortune in Garvey shares. They were $5 a piece in those days, which was a lot of money. And my mother had to remind my father that there was food and things to be bought because he was buying shears. And Daddy had those on his dresser. And I remember reaching out to touch them. And Daddy said, touch them and feel the power that the black man will someday know.
Get on board, countryman. Get on board, leave this land. Get on
Just months after his first stock offering, Garvey stunned the world with the purchase of the Black Star Line's first ship.
Let our steamships sail the high seas. Not one, not two, but hundreds of them. The stronger we become upon land and sea, the more will be the respect shown to us, and the greater will be the glory.
Flying home on the Black Star Line.
The SS Yarmouth, a 33-year-old wartime coal boat that Garvey planned to rename the Frederick Douglass, would set sail with an all-black crew under the command of Joshua Coburn, a black captain. One bright November morning in 1919, Garveyites assembled on the pier at 135th Street in Harlem to witness the launching of the Yarmouth. A spectator said, "We watched people jump up and down, throw up their hats and handkerchiefs, and cheer while the Yarmouth backed from the wharf and slowly glided down the North River." The ship appeared to embark on a spectacular ocean voyage, but because Garvey had not finished paying for it, the Yarmouth went only as far as the 23rd Street Pier. But when the Yarmouth finally made its maiden voyage, it was cause for an international celebration. The president of Cuba threw a banquet in honor of the crew, and members of his cabinet purchased shares in the Black Star Line. In Costa Rica, workers descended on the docks to shower the Yarmouth with fruits and flowers.
It was announced that one of the ships of the Black Star Line would be coming to Panama and going through the canal. I was a very small boy at the time, and my brother and I were given packed lunches, sandwiches, and drinks, and were packed off to a place called Christchurch by the Sea, waiting to see this Garvey ship arrive. We got there at about 9, 10 in the morning. Midday, no ship. 3 o'clock in the afternoon, no ship, but we were still there waiting. 9 o'clock, no ship. At about 9:30, 10, my brother put me on his back and we were on the way home. But the ship never actually came.
There's no denying the fact that Garvey's Black Star steamship line was a wonderful symbol. It was a powerful symbol. But it was nothing more than that, I think, a symbol. The fact that people would come down to the docks waiting for these ships, in some ways is metaphoric for the wishful thinking that was largely at the heart of the Garvey movement.
Garvey was betrayed by the few people he trusted to get the Black Star Line afloat. The man he asked to inspect the Yarmouth turned out to be an informant for J. Edgar Hoover. And his hand-picked captain, Joshua Coburn, convinced Garvey to pay 6 times what the ship was worth, and then took a kickback from the purchase price. Yet Garvey quickly raised and spent $200,000 on 2 more ships.
And making the purchase of those liners without being led by experts. He was deceived about the condition of those ships and overpaid for on what their value should have been. It was a disaster for the movement, and turned out to be a disaster for Mr. Garvey.
At the end of 1919, Marcus Garvey married Amy Ashwood, the woman who just months earlier had thrown herself in the line of fire to save his life.
They had a very rocky relationship. a lot of off again, on again, a lot of quarreling. And finally they married in a spectacular Liberty Hall marriage on Christmas Day.
Their extravagant wedding was the talk of Harlem. 5 different ministers performed the ceremony before 3,000 guests. Just 4 months later, the couple separated. Having a wife was an impediment to my work and peace of mind, Garvey would later say. I can't pay her personal attention as the average husband. In fact, I have no time to look after myself.
My father was committed totally to the struggle, and that's why he never seemed to relax. He never seemed to take a day off. He was always committed to the struggle. He was always appeared to be dressed, ready to work. And he's working at home. He was working at the office. He kept tremendous hours. So it was a total commitment to the struggle and the cause.
The UNIA was taking in thousands of dollars a day, but Garvey lived modestly on the 6th floor of a Harlem apartment building. He didn't drink or smoke, and preferred to eat the same food night after night. Garvey spent his few idle hours arranging and rearranging a collection of Egyptian vases and African ornaments, making his home into an orderly private world. Unless it was about UNIA business, Garvey rarely spoke to even his closest associates.
I never saw him laugh. I never saw him laugh. At the office, he was serious. When we went to visit him there and at home, well, he was very kind. My father was very kind. He was always bringing things for us, as children. But I never saw him. He was always looked serious.
On August 1st, 1920, thousands of UNIA delegates from 25 countries assembled at Liberty Hall and Madison Square Garden. Garvey called it the International Convention of the Negro Peoples of the World. He hoped to move a step closer to his dream of a black nation in Africa, with himself at the helm.
The whole convention is this extraordinary public event of pomp and ceremony and magnificence and grandiloquence. Garvey, he would now establish a stage, a world stage for his movement. And effectively what he gave the black world was a government in exile, a government in waiting.
We have met in this historic building tonight for the purpose of enlightening the world respecting the attitude of the new Negro. If you believe that the Negro should have a place in the sun, if you believe that Africa should be one vast empire controlled by the Negro, then arise and sing the national anthem of the Universal Negro Improvement Association.
The month-long convention combined substance with overblown symbolism. Garvey installed officials with outlandish titles like Supreme Potentate, Leader of the American Negroes, and Lady Commander of the Supreme Order of the Nile. After insisting that no African was qualified for the post, Garvey named himself Provisional President of Africa. But behind closed doors, convention delegates produced a groundbreaking document.
They developed a program which was based on assessment of what was the black experience in up to 1920 and how do we go forward, which led to the development of the Declaration of Rights of the Negro Peoples of the World. They were thinking there needed to be a black Declaration of Rights.
This was an important document that called upon the nations of Europe and America to respect the rights of black people throughout the world. This was the moment at which Garvey, I think, was both the most powerful in the sense of his articulation of ideas of justice along racial lines, and at the same time, his most grandiose and megalomaniacal. Because there was really nothing behind any of this.
Garvey's reply to his critics was simple. I am accused of creating dukes, barons, and knights, he said. But who gave the white man a monopoly on creating social order? Garvey's government in exile conducted its own foreign policy, appointing ambassadors and sending a telegram of support to the Irish Republican Army. He dispatched a team of engineers to Liberia to begin construction of a black homeland, and chartered a delegation to the League of Nations to argue for the transfer of African colonies to UNIA rule. When he finally took to the stage, it was Garvey's moment of greatest triumph.
25,000 people, black people, packed Madison Square Garden, and Garvey delivers this magnificent speech in which he tells the Europeans to give Africa a wide berth because we are coming home.
The day after Garvey's speech, a massive UNIA parade stretched through Harlem.
Hey, Lamb back. We back. Ooh, the parallels keep on happening. It's almost painful because it's like, wow, is history just that scientific, that it's just that we have to find the right moment to get all the ingredients right to really have revolution. And it is. It's just that history is just that blunt. And so I saw a comment in there from Jucha that I thought was really enlightening about this, especially this documentary, because they're like, oh, he was, he got so quiet, reserved, and just arranging things. It's like, well, yeah, what happens to someone when they're betrayed by all their friends, and then not just friends, but people who then find out to be J. Edgar Hoover's first black agents, it's just. Yeah, Marcus Garvey went through a lot and struggled through a lot to achieve a lot, and to this day, who do we remember? We don't remember any of those sellouts. We don't know anything. Maybe some people know Du Bois's name. Maybe it's on a high school. Maybe it's on an elementary school somewhere. But we don't know nothing that he produced because he didn't produce nothing. But what do we got in this background with us today? This RBG, this red, black, and green. Everyone rocked the red, black, and green. Everyone does. And as much as Garvey struggled, he produced so much for our people and produced further revolutionaries of our people later in time. Like I said earlier, there wouldn't be Malcolm X because Malcolm X's parents were members of UNIA. Father was a chapter leader, mom was a secretary of a chapter. And then without Malcolm X, there wouldn't have been a Black Panther Party. Without a Black Panther Party, there would have been us. Right. It's just so clear that Marcus Garvey was just had to struggle through so much to provide the world with so much, so many more revolutionaries and people who can fight for us. And yeah, just makes me love him more. It just it shows that he was also a human. People always want to say that these people who are our leaders, are just so inside themselves that they can't be hurt by anything that people do. I'm like, no, they are humans too. In case you forgot. So yeah, laying back. I'm just further inspired by him. Chief Sunday, how you feeling about this part of the documentary? Oh wait, one more time.
Man, I've been muted this whole time. I gotta unite with what you said and then the inspiration that you're feeling. I think that specifically when it talked about the shares, right, like buying the stocks and the woman, retells that story of, how her father, maybe would buy a little bit more than his partner wanted in the stocks because he was probably more united, more one to the, inevitable victory, right? That he knew that African people would have with his support, with mass support of the movement, and the way that he showed, his daughter and really was saying like it's for her as well, right? Remember this is going to be, what gets us power. right? This is that, and touch it, right, and feel it. And we have to feel the same way with how we are supporting our revolutionaries in these days, right? Like understanding that you can have the impact of a whole revolutionary organization, right? You can be a revolutionary. Even if you can't be the hands that deliver something, right? Even if you can't do it yourself, but through supporting, right? We have to make sure that we remember that, right? Revolutions don't come from any kind of freedom. They don't come free, right? Freedom ain't free. So you have to make sure that we take that labor that we put into the producing for white power, we put it into us, and that's what Garvey was all about.
Yes, lean back. Yes, yes. That labor is something that we have to put into revolution. If you don't put labor into revolution, what are you going to get out of it? I mean, it's a law of science. You have to put in work to get something out of it, right? You have to get energy and put in work, and you produce something. If you're not working, what are you producing? And that's what Marcus Garvey teaches us. We have to continue to work in order to produce something for our people. And he tried to produce this organization, this Black Star Line, right? And of course, it failed because some people chose to use their labor to undermine it, right? And that's what it was. It wasn't that it was not successful. It wasn't as simple as that dumb sellout professor type person was saying. It was an actual production of the labor of African people. So yeah, Yabe, what you thinking so far about this?
Laying back. Yeah, this has been a really eye-opening thing. Like every time like right in the beginning of the this part two is like talking about like building like an economic system like for African people, and like that was first thing, just dual and contending power. Like he was building for his people, like building like a whole apparatus to like serve the people. And like they say that it was unsuccessful, but like then they were like, oh yeah, then he raised like $200,000 in like that paid terms. It's like that's like an enormous amount of like resources, like the colonies, like resources, and like it just shows like the power of the masses, and like just how much like so many lies told. Like the whole thing about Garvey's authoritarian, anti-democratic. But like, how do you get 25,000 like people and like to see you speak, and speak not just for like it wasn't just Garvey, it was like literally the entire continent of Africa, like hearing, listening, reciting, like, and then building like and wanting to like organize like Garvey and like the people of the UNIA, and like that just really shows like just the power of like political education, the power of like uniting with the masses, because at the end of the day, like the masses are going to be able to build everything back, and more. And like, just seeing how, he maintained his, confidence throughout this whole struggle, like with the Black Star Line. It's like, just bounce back, bounce back, bounce back. And that's, that is what, the colonized revolution has shown us throughout history. We've only ever gotten better. We've only ever gotten more scientific. We've only made greater strides. And, just like, the hope of like a united Africa, like was said, is still like one of the most like powerful ideas, like fueling like the revolution, on the continent today. It seems like all of the flags, of the revolutions on the continent have the red, black, and green in it. And that's because like Garvey really showed the people that there is something else than the colony, and that there is power that they have, united. Really appreciate it. Laying back.
Yes, laying back. No, exactly. And like we have to, remember too. We saw the example of them in Kenya, right? Of like the person from Kenya talking about how the boys, the children, but a lot of the boys would memorize the editorial and then just go out to recite the editorial, right? And so you see that happening on the continent. So that the word of Marcus Garvey spoke to all Africans, and that's something that is also just inspiring. Is that his labor was so clearly for everybody. It wasn't just to liberate one section of his people, right? It was to liberate literally all of his people. Chief of T, what you thinking?
Y'all have laid out so much so well. I'm gonna have to stop going after Chief Yabe because he's always on it. But one of the things that I really just think about, especially when these people doing this documentary, especially the colonizers, talking about like giving up this and giving up that, and like not being close with friends, and talking about in this bad way that the African man who like spent more money on shares, and Chief Yabe was the one that actually told me $5 for a share is like $600 now. So you can imagine, like, yeah, right, right. So you can imagine what you know people had to, African people wanted to do, and the sacrifice, right, that they made for the grander like vision of a free themselves, a free Africa, a free Black nation. And it reminds me of the things that we talk about when we talk about sacrifice, and like sacrifice for self-preservation, right? Like Garvey would sacrifice all of these aspects of his life, and would just be ingrained, right? The only time he ever spoke to anyone was about UNIA work, and like there's information, passages in the book about like how we spent a lot of time organizing and financing the UNIA, even when he had young children at home, and even the African man who decided that like I'm gonna spend nearly $600 to buy these shares, when there's my family needs to be fed, but understood that those shares were power for their family, right, for the grander like liberation of all the peoples, and like African peoples. And so I just it's really one of those things that I really think about, like of like the things that we have to ensure that we are ready to give up for our self determination, for our own like lives, and lives of billions of colonized poor working class masses. So yeah, that's really what I've just been sitting here thinking about, like the things that our people gave up just to have this share of what they knew was their freedom. So yeah, I just that's what I've got.
Lambeck, I think it also makes it, you see how disgusting it is to steal that, right? To steal that money from the masses, right? To know that, and we discussed it in the book chat when the accountant, he had thousands and thousands of dollars coming in, and he was just taking money off the top, stealing for himself, right, so he could live a petty blue life. And we have to understand that's what happens today too, right? That's why so many people had to be removed, right, from the revolutionary apparatus, because you are stealing from the people, right? Either you are hoarding your wealth yourself because you are a petty bourgeois individual who is cosplaying as revolutionary, or you're literally, running off with money from, for instance, Nigeria, right? Running off with money that is being made by the actual poor working class, and knowing how much people give, right? People sometimes have to say, I only got enough for food tonight, but I can make a pledge, right? Or I can, donate in some other way, right? But $5, and knowing it was $600 as well, right? Like that tells you as well, like people donating 5 cents, right? To be a member, right? Everybody needs to feels the need to put in something for a better world, because they know that this hunger now, right? It won't mean anything once we're free. And to be the individual to come in and just cut that off, right, to make so that person is sacrificing themselves, putting their labor, but will not receive that revolutionary fruit, right? It's just
Yes, exactly. No, it is, and you can see, and we'll raise resources just because of that, right? We'll raise resources because the matter of stealing it and taking away resources that the people are putting, because just like Fatih was saying, they want to preserve the collective. When they are preserving oneself, this, like that father said, this is going to mean something for our people. Right, that's why he had them. He didn't say it's gonna mean something for us, like our family of five. Like, no, he's like, this is gonna mean something for our people. And to take that away is taking away that revolutionary drive, spirit, and sacrifice from our people. And how dare someone take away that sacrifice from our people and make it into nothing? And that's something that also this UNIA movement shows us, is that that Marcus Garvey was on the right side of history. You knew that because his movement is what created true enemies, right? W.E.B. Du Bois's movement, the NAACP, like, they didn't have true enemies. They didn't produce a line that split them from an enemy. Marcus Garvey and the UNIA, that was a movement of unity responsible for creating the first African sellouts in the FBI. If the first people in the FBI come from there, right, then that means that this movement clearly was so for the people that you can't question the power and legacy of Marcus Garvey. You can't. It produced the first people who were from our own nation who were out.
It's scientific. And I mean, isn't that what Mao said? Didn't Mao say, if they do not attack our schools, our camps, our settlements, if they do not show us that we are their enemy, we're not in the right place? We know that we are like the revolutionary vanguard, but we know we are righteous when we see attacks come at us, right? When we see the status quo, the colony kicking back, and in the form of sellouts. It's his favorite way and the most effective way to kick back and protect the colony.
Yes, exactly. And so we have to always push back against these sellouts, and we have to always show them that we're willing to do whatever it takes to be free and to be liberated. And so one thing is that we are willing to make sure that we get resources for our revolution. So we're going to ask again for people to donate or to pledge. So if you are watching right now and you are trying to say, hey, you know what? Marcus Garvey got the people to buy shares of what amounted to $600 at that time, right? If you are saying, I want to do something in the spirit of that, then you can donate to Black Hammer right now. You can pledge to donate to Black Hammer right now. It's Cash App, Black Hammer Org, Venmo, Black Hammer Org. And you know what? Like, it's so important to really show that this is the way that you build collective resources. That's what Marcus Garvey was doing when he saw that, wow, there's $200 million worth of wealth when it comes to putting bonds into the war. It wasn't that like, oh, I can get that. It's like, no, wait, we're actually good at collectivizing our wealth. We just have to do it for something that's for our liberation instead. So I'm gonna give $20 myself to it.
I'll match it
for Marcus Garvey.
Gotta match my
I'll
co-host.
match too, Chief Ojo. I'll match Chief Cindiata and Chief Ojo as well with $20.
go.
Another $20 because I don't be donating $20 tomorrow as well.
Oh snap! Okay, laying back. Thanks. And then we got another 4 from Mama as well. Because that's also what it takes too. It's just like, again, people who are just willing to provide something from themselves, right? A little bit of sacrifice from yourself, right? If you are always getting a Grubhub or a DoorDash or something, if you are always trying to do something special like that, you know what? That's a small sacrifice, trust. You can let that go for your people.
And it's
right?
got coronavirus on it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, we got
in the fridge.
$5 from Colibri. Hey, laying back.
Can we have someone put in the comments that myself and Chief Petit and Chief Oju are all donating $20, and y'all need to match that too, right? Match your hosts.
Yes, match the host, please do.
Don't you want to?
And while people are dropping them 20s, while they're dropping them dubs up in the comments, all right, we're gonna get back into the last part of the film, just so that okay, and we're gonna get into the last part of the film in order to see exactly how Marcus Garvey continue to not let the sellouts, not let the haters, not let the white power state take over what was going on with the UNA, right?
I want to respond to a comment briefly. The question in the comments was, what is the money being used for? It's a great question. The money is being used to do a couple of things to make a material impact, right, on our colonized communities. For instance, some of this money will be used to buy KN95 masks that are the most effective masks you can use to protect yourself from the coronavirus, right, and the Delta variant. They'll be used to buy granola bars that we're going to put in bags with these KN95 masks and pass out to the colonized masses, right? To the poor and sometimes houseless colonized people who are on the MARTA train here in Atlanta, right? All hours of the night, right? Coming home from work, going to work at 6, at 5 a.m. We're going to be there to give that to them, as well as to show them that they can be revolutionaries too, that they can do this too, right? So that's just a brief thing.
Yeah,
Watching
videos,
you know,
it's like your money is also helping our chapters who are looking for land right now and looking for places where they can provide spaces for the people to be housed, to be fed as well, right? And which is in the spirit of Marcus Garvey, we are using our resources to give back to the people, all right? And so and these K95 masks, you know, they ain't cheap. We're not using the cheap cloth masks or surgical masks. We are using K95 masks. We're giving out black K95 masks as well because our people want a little bit of that style, and they deserve that, right? That's they deserve a little bit of that. And so yes, we want y'all to make sure that you are understanding what your resources are going to. They come back to you. They come back to you as the people. All right. So yeah, Lamback, we got $10 from Watakame and G Lamback. That's awesome. And so we're gonna get into the last part of this documentary. Make sure that you are still continue to share this live, continue to share this political education. This political education is for the people, right? And so make sure that they are getting this Marcus Garvey story, and make sure they're getting our political education spin on it, because as we all talked about here, this colonized documentary be playing some tricks. So we're gonna get into this last part. All right, y'all. Land back.
To be a part of the Marcus Garvey movement, it made me feel that I owned one half of the world, and I didn't own the other half because I didn't want it.
One Irish woman observing the parade remarked, "And to think, the Negro will get his liberty before the Irish."
And of course we were looking for my father, who would be in the group of officers marching proudly down the avenue with his sword at his side. It was an exciting thing to see.
Marcus Garvey now stood at the head of the largest black movement in history. He claimed millions of followers around the world. But with the Black Star Line hemorrhaging money and his black critics and the U.S. government on the attack, Garvey's fast-rising star would soon begin to fall. Not all African Americans were thrilled by the splendor of the Garvey movement. Many were embarrassed by the pompous spectacle of Garvey in cap and gown. A. Philip Randolph, who had introduced him to his first Harlem audience, said Garvey had succeeded in making the Negro the laughingstock of the world.
W.B. Du Bois and A. Philip Randolph saw Garvey as a person who was engaged in a grand distraction. Garvey's emphasis on a program of African redemption, his pretensions to some kind of imperial posture as the provisional president of Africa, they thought of as either charlatanry or just pure buffoonery. Their complaints about him provide a legitimation for the government to move against Garvey. Because you can always say, you see, his own people don't even want him. And if they don't want him, then there must be something wrong.
Encouraged by growing black opposition, the U.S. government stepped up surveillance of Garvey. 8 federal agencies were directed to report on his activities, and J. Edgar Hoover resolved to deal with Garvey once and for all.
They placed spies in the UNIA, they sabotaged Black Star Line, the engines sometimes of the ships were actually damaged by foreign matter being thrown into the fuel and so on. And there was every effort made to destroy the movement. However, that wasn't the only thing that actually destroyed Garvey. There were internal problems to the movement as well as these external forces.
Garvey's own crews took the Black Star Line to the brink of disaster. One captain steered his vessel off course to visit his wife. Another had a nervous breakdown and tried to sink his own ship. Enraged at the chaos on board one ship, Garvey got into a fistfight with the captain and fired half the crew. But when it came to mismanagement, he had only himself to blame.
Garvey looked for people who would be personally loyal to him. I think this is the only way we can explain the mismanagement and incompetence of the Black Star steamship line. The first treasurer of that line was a railroad clerk who had no experience in bookkeeping. What was important here, I think, was not an intellectual competence, but a loyalty to this charismatic leader.
As things spun out of control, Garvey confided in Herbert Boulin, the owner of the Berry and Ross Doll Company. To Garvey, Boulin was one of a few real friends. To J. Edgar Hoover, he was Agent P-138.
He got closer to Garvey than anyone else working for the government. And Garvey was really isolated. Things weren't going well with the organization. The Black Star Line was losing money. And so remarkably, he confesses to this informant that he tried suicide, that he was thinking of suicide again. It shows the loneliness Garvey must have had at the top. You know, he couldn't reveal those sorts of things to the key people around him.
By 1921, the Black Star Line was on the verge of bankruptcy. But Garvey mailed brochures to his supporters advertising stock in yet another ship. It would prove to be a major blunder.
In the brochure is a picture of a ship which purports to have been the SS Phyllis Wheatley. It was a ship that Garvey was negotiating for and did not own. And it seems that someone etched into the bow of the ship the words, the SS Phyllis Wheatley. In other words, it was a misrepresentation. It gave the impression that Garvey and the Black Star Line owned this ship, when in fact there was no such ship.
In January 1922, Garvey and 3 UNIA officers were arrested for federal mail fraud. The man Hoover once called a notorious Negro agitator was finally in his grasp.
The mail fraud was the most convenient and ultimately the only means that they could find to prosecute him. Prosecution was not the end. Deportation was the government's real aim.
In July 1922, while he was out on bail, Garvey made a move that would lead his black critics to question his sanity. He held a meeting with Edward Young Clark, the Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan.
Garvey felt that the Ku Klux Klan represented the invisible government of the United States. That's the real source of power in America, Garvey believed. And Garvey felt that as provisional president of Africa, he was entitled to meet with the counterpart of white American power. And so Garvey didn't feel that he had done anything wrong. In fact, Garvey thought that what he had done was a diplomatic stroke of genius.
After he met with the Klan leaders and had them speak at his rallies, he was viewed as an enemy of black people. For a so-called responsible black spokesman to be having anything to do with these people was viewed as a complete and utter betrayal. This was too much.
In a letter to the Attorney General, 8 prominent black critics said the UNIA was composed of the most primitive and ignorant element, Negro sharks and Negro fanatics. They called for Garvey's deportation, but Garvey fought back. When W.E.B. Du Bois called him the most dangerous enemy of the Negro race, Garvey said Du Bois was a rabid mulatto who needed a horsewhipping. A. Philip Randolph, who had once befriended Garvey, called the UNIA leader a half-wit, low-grade moron.
In the midst of that, A. Philip Randolph received a package in the mail, and thinking it was a bomb, he called the police. They opened it up, and they found that it was the severed human hand of a white man, signed with a note signed by the KKK. Randolph believed that it was really the Garvey movement that had sent it.
Garvey, now frequently accompanied by 8 bodyguards, denied involvement and said he was the target of violence. But then Reverend James Eason, once Garvey's hand-picked second-in-command, and now expected to be a key prosecution witness, was shot and killed. Before he died, Eason identified his assailants as Garveyites. As Garvey's trial began on May 18, 1923, a police bomb squad stood on alert, and UNIA members packed the courtroom. On the first day of the trial, Garvey fired his attorney and announced that he would defend himself.
I think Garvey believed that his powers of rhetoric and oratory would ultimately sway the court in his favor. He would have ruled the court, in other words, by his superior oratorical gifts. And I think Garvey came, in the end, to rue that decision because it was a disaster.
Garvey paced up and down before the jury box as a parade of former UNIA officials took the stand to testify against him. Defiant, Garvey blamed subordinates and evaded responsibility for his errors.
He also took a lot of time badgering witnesses, alienating, I think, in the process, a lot of jurors by his courtroom manner. He seemed to be intimidating of witnesses, even his own witnesses. It was not a good performance by Garvey.
In his closing statement, Garvey's voice carried clear through the corridors and out to the street.
I want no mercy, only justice, justice, justice. I would not betray my struggling race. If I did, I should be thrown into the nethermost parts of hell.
After a 4-week trial, his 3 co-defendants were acquitted, but Garvey was convicted and given the maximum sentence of 5 years in prison. Hoover's agents had the UNIA under surveillance for years in search of damaging evidence. But in the end, Garvey's conviction hung on using the mails to defraud one man, Benny Dancy, of $25.
He took no advice. He did not heed advice. He felt that anything contrary to his view of things was an attempt to derail him or to deflect him from his goals. He had just an overweening confidence in his own ability in areas where he had no expertise, such as in the case of ships, in the case of trying a legal case. in his investment priorities. He just would not take advice.
In February 1925, after nearly 2 years of appeals, Marcus Garvey was escorted to the Atlanta Federal Penitentiary as prisoner number 19359. His only personal assets were $40 and a few hundred shares of his own worthless stock. UNIA members believed their leader had been railroaded. To dampen their frustration, Garvey wrote a song.
Let no trouble worry you. Keep cool, keep cool. Don't get hot like tumblefool. Keep cool, keep cool.
Garvey's personal secretary, Amy Jakes, had become his second wife in 1922. While he was in prison, she and Garvey's followers struggled to keep the movement alive and raised tens of thousands of dollars for Garvey's defense.
There's one group in rural Louisiana that gave on average 5 cents. They actually gave $8, but when you actually counted the number of people involved, it actually amounted to something like 5 cents each. And it actually showed the level of loyalty that the little people had towards Garvey and the movement.
People around the world began to send in petitions and letters and so on. There were literally millions of signatures that were appended to petitions that were taken to various government agencies in Washington, D.C. In South Africa, people would have Marcus Garvey Sundays and pray for Garvey and so on.
If they put you in a flame, though you should not bear the blame.
But the government had its own reasons for wanting to release Garvey.
Keep cool.
Garvey had very weak lungs, and he also suffered from heart disease. He suffered from bronchitis and a series of asthma attacks, was often put in the prison hospital. They feared that he could die or become severely ill, and it would just add to the martyrdom aspect of the Garvey movement and increase his following.
And there was an election year coming up in the U.S., and the Republican administration felt that black folk, who were largely Republicans in those days, might vote for the other party if Garvey was not released.
On November 18th, 1927, after serving 2 years and 9 months, Garvey was pardoned by President Calvin Coolidge. But he was ordered immediately deported. He was put on board the SS Saramacca, a ship owned by United Fruit, the same company on whose Costa Rican plantation he had worked as a young man. It was announced that Garvey would sail back to Jamaica from the port of New Orleans.
It was a Monday morning in November. A cold, drizzly, damp November New Orleans morning. It was more like a Mardi Gras day in New Orleans on that particular day. Going out to see Marcus Garvey on this ship. I imagine the conductors got tired of asking for fares, so some people rode for nothing. And the fare was only 7 cents. And they were just packed on top of each other on the streetcar going out to the riverfront.
And everybody went out with their children, everybody just to get that glimpse of him as the ship would leave. And the people could stand on the levee and stand close to the river. And, you know, they were for miles around, for about the people.
Mr. Garvey was not allowed to land. He had to stay on board ship. He did not put his foot on land. And he spoke to the people, bidding them farewell and wishing them well and asking them to hold on, keep the fort. As the ship was moving out from the docks, the people on shore was singing the President General's hymn. One God, our firm endeavor, one a most glorious spent, one destiny forever. God bless our president.
We saw waving, we saw him do that with a handkerchief or something. But the people in general, they just was waving. Waving, 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 and crying and waving, crying and waving.
And the waves appeared to have been in harmony with the song as the people were singing, and the boat was moving out to sea.
They felt they was losing their father. Somebody so close to them. Or losing themselves. What are we going to do?
And my mother said until the day she died, she would not forget the sight of Garvey waving that white handkerchief as far as she could see the boat.
Back in Jamaica, Garvey received a hero's welcome. He and Amy Jakes Garvey settled in Kingston and had 2 sons. He tried his hand at elective office, real estate, an amusement park, a collection agency, and a newspaper. But when an American court took title to his personal assets and all UNIA property from New York to Kingston, Garvey was forced to declare bankruptcy.
Garvey was now a person who had come down in the world. And Garvey would be followed by children on the street, and they would heckle him, and Garvey felt very humiliated by this.
Garvey relocated to London in 1935. For a time, he had regular speaking engagements and managed to publish a newspaper. A handful of UNIA members, including Jacob Mills, migrated to Liberia on their own. But without Garvey's strong hand, his hundreds of thousands of followers in the United States dwindled to a small band of the faithful.
The men folk, if they had your names and everything, and you are a member of the UNIA, you'd lose your job. So you had to meet in disguise. That was one of the reasons why the Garvey movement was so thorough in being broke up. You couldn't say, I'm a UNIA member, I'm Marcus Garvey. You whispered it, Marcus Garvey. You could not speak his name.
Garvey was alone in London. The asthma and heart disease that had plagued him in prison began to worsen.
Garvey had a stroke in January of 1940, and he becomes incapacitated. George Padmore, who was a columnist for the Chicago Defender, had heard a rumor that Garvey had died, and instead of confirming this, he published a premature obituary.
The obituary described Garvey as a man whose followers had deserted him, a man who died broke, alone, and unpopular.
When Garvey reads it, he lets out a loud moan and he collapses. He suffers a second stroke. And next morning, he dies.
The date was June 10th, 1940. Marcus Garvey died a forgotten man. But his vision of Africa would influence future generations of what he called the beloved and scattered millions of the Negro race. When Garvey's passionate ideas about black pride and independence finally took hold, he would be revered by many as a prophet and a saint.
In death, I shall be a terror to the foes of Negro liberty. Look for me in the whirlwind or the song of the storm. Look for me all around you.
In his 53 years, Marcus Garvey never set foot in Africa.
I dreamed a dream that he came and I saw him. And he said to me, Barnes, do not be worried, for everything is working according to plan. I am not dead. I am only sleeping.
The organization left a legacy of I am. Simply, I am. With no apology. I am. We had never had that up to that time. We belonged to churches where we sang, but Garvey made you stand tall and quiet, looking into the future. And that's a great legacy.
Land back. Goodness gracious. Land back. Wow. I mean, I know they try to do like the colonizer violence at the end as though like he died and all was forgotten. Clearly he wasn't forgotten, right? Millions of people, this is in comments, millions of people continue to be inspired by him, continue to do work based off of his teachings. Pan-Africanism, where that come from? It came from Garvey, y'all. He was never forgotten. And it wasn't just about him. Like he said, we just read in the book tribe, like find me in the whirlwind, and find us in this great energy and spirit that will continue to fight any of those who are against the liberty of our people. Right. And it's just, it's of course, his life did end like earlier than he was relatively young, but he accomplished a lot and continues to accomplish a lot through revolutionaries of today. So, I wanted to start with our special guest actually to think about what are y'all thinking about this last part of the documentary?
Okay, it's my turn. Land back, it's just a lot, and just to see these colonizers pose Marcus Garvey as like a legacy that wasn't there, like, oh, he died, no one knew, just hopeless and this, that, and the other. And I'm thinking to myself, like, I remember when I came home once and was talking to my dad about like all the colonial things that have been happening, and like, oh, I want to do this and I don't want to, like, I need another name and this, that, and the other. And he'd be like, do you know Marcus Garvey? I was like, oh, here we go. And that's the legacy, right? That's like, he never stepped foot in Africa, but people within, colonial Africa knew, the stories of him and knew like the just the depth in which he really wanted that liberation for his people and really wanted that self-determination for his people. And the fact that these colonizers are just like, oh, like he failed here, he failed there. And I'm thinking, how though? I mean, they don't even mention the fact that I have to find out again, that Ho Chi Minh listen to Garvey's speeches. That's a rabbit hole that I can't wait to actually go down. But to see that connection and know that, like, between Black Panther Party, even within this organization, that the legacy of Marcus Garvey still lives on in all of us, and those who want to continue to fight and sacrifice for the liberation of colonized people everywhere, and wanting to unite colonized people everywhere, and Yeah, they can teach us about these sellout. What is it? W.E. Petit Bout du Bois, whatever. They can teach us about that. But like you said, what did he do versus the black, red, and green that we see in Africa and African movements all over. So it's just really, just they can say what they want. It's like we know and see the truth materially of the legacy of Marcus Garvey. So that's what I'm sitting here thinking. Chief Yabe.
Yeah, totally. Go ahead. Yeah, Yabe, what you think?
Land back, yeah, no, it was, yeah, this is definitely like, yeah, filled with that spirit, like, just hearing those, like, women of like the UNIA, sing that, that beautiful song that, like, I mean, literally inspired millions of UNIA members and African people and, all colonized people to see that, they can, that they can do this too. Like they can build an organization, that they can serve their people, that they can, provide a real hope, material hope for the, the masses of colonized people and, and just inspire so much, like, yeah, I mean, like unity among African people. I mean, like I remember the first time I learned about Marcus Garvey was like, I was on the plantation and a gas station, and people, a Jamaican employee, like, yeah, that I worked with for a long time, like, just was like mentioning him, and I was just like, who is this man? And then, he told me about, just how, like, just like as a Jamaican, like he was just so proud that, this man was from his nation and like, fought for, the rights of, people that he, had just more recently come to like, the snakes, to like see like African people here and like finding out, just this history. And it's like, and this is like, regular colonized, poor and working class people seeing Garvey for like who he really was, and it matters the masses. It doesn't matter like these intellectuals, this intelligentsia who, can't produce a theory that can stand up to anything, for like more than 2 minutes, and then like, it's the next person. But, Garvey is just like this like fourth right force, and the people that he's inspired, the masses, are gonna, continue the legacy, for just centuries. But yeah, it's amazing. That's what I was thinking. Land back.
Yes, land back. Yes, I full unity with that, Chief Yahweh, because it's this legacy that lives. I mean, it lives on in the people of Jamaica, right? And they have everything to be proud of, and it lives on the people of Africa on the continent, and which is why even Fatih's father is like, "Do you know Marcus Garvey?" Right? It's just that, he continued to be talked about, and so that's like, how dare these colonizers who making this film pretend as though he had any aspect of him forgotten. Chief Sunyata, what you think about this last part?
Land back, y'all. Yeah, I unite with what's been said, and especially, how devastating the things that they do to our heroes is, right? And Marcus Garvey should be regarded as, a legendary historical figure, regardless of what you think about the UNIA, right? Even if you're a colonizer, like this is a legendary historical figure who had an impact that is immeasurable in like the hearts and minds of a people who had just left like the most dejected state of existence, right? The most what could be argued for being one of the most terrible conditions of life, being a slave in the antebellum South, and then it's over and you're thrust into this new world where you're still at the bottom of everything, right? In the Reconstruction era. And then there's a voice that shines through and is like actually telling you you're human, right? Showing you a world that you've never even dreamt of because your parents and grandparents were slaves too, right? So I think just thinking about how magnificent that is and should be, and to African people, it's very obvious African people did not make this documentary. It's just not how they choose to celebrate Garvey, right? They choose to show him as if he was a failure, to talk about, him, moving, to Europe almost as if he's running away, right? Him, like almost as bragging that it's oh, it's a gotcha moment for you to say this man who's fought so hard for African revolution has never like set foot in Africa. That's disgusting, right? That you would celebrate that or think that's like some fun fact about a man. That might be the most crushing thing, right, to Garvey. And there's probably a reason that wasn't allowed to happen. That wasn't up to him, his choice, right? Like we talked about the British interest in keeping him out of the continent.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's a lot to, and that's where I think that I want to leave it as like this documentary doesn't have the passion that colonizing African people have for Marcus Garvey. So I can't wait until we make one, an anti-colonial documentary of all of our heroes. I believe the propaganda and agitation and propaganda can do that, where we can really celebrate our people as well as educate on them, because that's what Garvey deserves, right? And that's what we've been trying to do this whole Black August, right? Is celebrating our African revolutionaries, celebrating Marcus Garvey, the work that he put in, and the vision that he laid forward. Land back.
Yeah, slam back, exactly. Because it's important to undo what has been taught to us about our heroes, right? About our revolutionary heroes. And like this is the way that a lot of times you're going to be shown them. And it's important that, hey, like if you're going to be shown it, at least get the real facts, right? Get the real facts from poor working class colonized people ready just to lay out the truth for you, because they want the truth for you in order for you to have a way to liberate yourself. And yeah, for me, like this last part, seeing Marcus Garvey, like that whole part in New Orleans, where everyone, you think that like that could be like a low moment of like, okay, like this is the end of my journey, and he's on the boat. But then to see that everyone from New Orleans is going out there to tell him goodbye, like that was beautiful. That was so beautiful, because it just showed that like it didn't matter. It didn't matter what anybody did to undermine his movement. It didn't matter what anybody did to undermine him, to betray him, to do whatever. He won. He won no matter what, because you saw the people come out and say goodbye to their hero, goodbye to their father, to some, right? Goodbye to their savior, essentially, their savior. And it just shows that no matter what kind of betrayal sellouts may do, no matter how much the white power state tries to grasp you in its like just teeth, that the people will always still be on your side. When you are there for the people will always be on your side. And so remember that, Hammers, remember that, revolutionary heroes here in this organization, that no matter what, when you're on the side of the people, you will always win. And Marcus Garvey is just a great example of that. It's one of the best examples of that. So we land back. And before we sign off, we want to just one more call for resources, one more call, because we know that maybe this was the part you're like, oh my God, you know what? Garvey got me. It got me, y'all. I need to do something. It got me. And so,
got you.
Right? And so maybe it did. Like right now, you're like, I'll give or pledge, $5 or $10 or $20. Like earlier, we were giving $20 and asking people to match us. Let's get a couple more matches of the $20. See who can help. Not just contribute to our organization, but contribute to the masses of people who will always be on your side when we win. They will always be on your side. You want to support people who will always be on your side. That's what you got to do in a fight. You need to have someone who is going to be on your side. You got to give them whatever they need so that they're ready to be on your side. And we have to do what we got to do to keep the masses on our side. So, yeah, I would love to see a couple more. I've been inspired by Garvey. I'll do 10 more just because, because of what Marcus Garvey just inspired me right now. But yes,
what donations that y'all? I want to see them.
I'm gonna match you. I'm gonna match that $10.
I want to see it from there.
Yeah. I was like, I want to see it from out there too. Yeah. You know what? If the spirit moves us, the spirit moves us. All right.
All right.
But yes, I want to see how the spirit moves y'all out there too.
Yeah, I'll do 10 as well. I get peer pressure very easily. But I want y'all to get peer pressure very easily in these comments, right? To make sure you are donating, right? We are super cool, and we are donating because we believe that this is the right way to build something for our people, for our future. So you should believe that too. Take our word for it, right? Come get some political education. We just saw a whole lot of evidence as to why we need to invest in a world, where we have self-determination, right? Not just for Africans, even for all colonized people, right? That was a whole 2 hours of evidence. So come on, we saw some more donations from QAnon Smash White Power. I very much do appreciate it, whoever you are. $40 for the True Leadership, as well as another 10 from Red. Come on, y'all, keep it rolling in, y'all. Keep it rolling in.
When you said be cool, I'm thinking about that song that Marcus Garvey wrote alongside that "Keep Cool." I was like, well, and that was something I did not know about until I saw this documentary. That he wrote songs, and then 2, that's the song he wrote when he was in there. $4 more. Hey,
okay. Yeah, I think all the music was so beautiful. Like the anthem, everything.
And I'm gonna keep that lesson. Keep cool, right? He was like, all this stuff happened to me. You know what? Keep cool, but keep cool doesn't necessarily mean keep quiet. That's an important lesson. Keep cool don't mean necessarily keep quiet, but keep cool, right? Do your thing, and the cards will fall into place. I'm not sure that's the metaphor. I'm not good with colonizing metaphors, but everything will fall into place.
Exactly. We got to keep cool, and we got to be prepared to overturn contradictions, because that's all that our problems are, right? That's all that colonialism is. It's just a contradiction. In every step we take, every mask we hand out, right? Every colonized person that we politically educate, we win to their own revolutionary potential, is another step, right? We got to keep cool, y'all, because it's hot out here. And it's struggle out here, and the only way you get through struggle is by keeping cool during that struggle and growing. And we got 8 more for Garvey the Genius. Okay, shout out.
We'll leave it with, we'll leave it once we get at least one more donation.
Last one.
Yes, who got that? Who got that for the fire that Marcus Garvey brought us, right? And to help contribute to the apparatus that's gonna make the documentary on Marcus Garvey.
Exactly. One more donation, the cherry on top. That's what we want to see.
Yes. While we're trying to get that last donation, we can go through our announcements so that people can know what we're doing, and maybe we'll get that special donation during our announcements.
See all the work we do and all of the shows. You'll just want to invest in your future.
Yes. So this Sunday we have the Revolutionary Book Chapter. We're reading Marcus Garvey, y'all. We'll get to more of it. Parts 5 and 6 of Marcus Garvey and the Vision of Africa, which is a combination of writings from other people as well as Marcus Garvey. So we can get into it, kind of seeing just exactly how this documentary played out, but in deeper words. You get it in you get more of a picture of just how he saw the situation and of how the critics saw theirs. And a lot more gets exposed. Yeah, so that's Sunday, August 29th, 11 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time.
And then also Sunday, we have our amazing Forging the Hammer, which is a monthly political study and forging experience that builds us as hammers, as revolutionaries every month. This is going to be at 3 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, 12 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time on Sunday. You don't want to miss it. And this is one of those special Sundays with the double trouble, that book trap, right? And then that Forging the Hammer. Y'all been through it. Y'all know how it feels to get the double political education and double forging. So come through. You do not want to miss this. Land back. It's a big Sunday.
Yes. And then this Monday, we have The Vanguard, again, at 8 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. You saw it, Black Hammer's first mukbang, right? We got that seafood from our local colonized, wonderful, amazing cooks at the Juicy Crab. Juicy Crab, as well as those daiquiris from New Orleans, Daiquiri Bar and Grill. So, supporting local colonized restaurants who also are supporting us and want to be like, hey, can we show the Vanguard at our place? Right? So,
on TV.
Yeah. So tune in for Mukbang Part 2. Mukbang Part 2. Right? Hey. coming.
And then on Tuesday, just like every Tuesday, an exceptional rally for this biggest, baddest anti-colonial revolutionary organization in the world. This week's theme is duty to build a free world. We have a duty, right, to build a free world for our people, a free future. So tune in Tuesday, August 31st, the last day of Black August, at 1 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. We will be going into this rally to show y'all all the work that we do as an organization and to get ready as revolutionaries for another week of building a free world for our people. Land back. And that's going to be live on Black Hammer TV YouTube, where you can catch it in 4K.
Yes. And on Saturday, September 4th, we got in the California chapter the Chill Drill. California chapter is out here ready to serve the masses, inform the masses, and get them ready for this upcoming season, right? Oh, yeah, let's talk about keeping cool.
Keep cool with the Chill Drill. Okay.
You know, there'll be music, raffles, there'll be local vendors, and as well as free masks, clothes, and food, as we always do, and even safety workshops. The California chapter is doing it, all right? And so it's going to be 5 to 7 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time, so the local LA time, actually. So about that E instead of a P. But you know what? If you in LA, if you in Compton, it's gonna be at 2125 West Compton Boulevard. So you better be there if you're watching from the West Coast.
I'm so jealous I don't get to go there.
Yeah, and if you are interested in talking about film and informing our people, if you're interested in making film, TV, news, art, whatever you'd like to do in order to tell people what's on your mind, then you got to join Agitation and Propaganda. It's a committee where you can inform yourself, inform others, and let people know just how you're feeling, right? And you can let the people know how you're feeling about this colonial state. Let the people know how you're feeling about these contradictions, all through political education, art, music, so many ways, through news. And so email us at bhagitationpropaganda@protonmail.com. All right, y'all. And you know what? We still need that one final donation. And so who's gonna do it for us? Who's gonna be the one that's gonna step up and say, you know what? I can do that one more sacrifice for the people and give a little bit of something, whether that is $1 to $500,
just some crumbs.
Right? Whether that's $500 in reparations, all the way to $1 million in reparations.
You got $1 million. That's okay. We'll take it. We'll take anything.
Yes.
Because we need anything. The masses of people need everything, right? They need material solutions, and that is everything, right? Hammer cities, a life, a future, right? Building a free world for our children and our grandchildren. That's what we're donating for, y'all. That's what this $400 goal is for, y'all.
Mm-hmm. So you could pledge if you need to pledge $5 or $10. You don't have to pledge a large amount. You could do that as well. That's something that you could do next week. You could drop that in there as well, just like someone said. Pledges work too.
Yeah. If you know that you're gonna have some birthday money, you know you're gonna get your paycheck or your unemployment in a little bit, then go ahead and make a pledge. You know, we will catch back up with you, and we'll make sure that you hold true. You know, to give into this revolutionary cause. But it's a great way to continue supporting, even if right now you don't have the material necessary. Oh, we got a Xander Smith in the chat. Land back, Xander.
Hey.
Pledge. We will be reaching out to you as best we can to follow up on that. Land back. There we go.
Okay. Oh, and then and 20 reparations for the conqueror. Rohan, yes.
Steve Rohan. Okay.
The conqueror, yes.
Conqueror.
Like I told them, they my chief. They my chief, even if they my chief.
Everybody's chief.
Yes, everybody's chief. Yes. Laying back, yeah. Okay, well that's awesome. Look at that. Us doing what we gotta do to meet the people where they at. So I want to thank our special guest, Chief Yabe, Chief Petit. Thank you. It's a pleasure to have you in here discussing Garvey with us. But yes, join us next month for another movie trap related, or maybe not related, but probably related to the book that we could be reading next month. So we'll see you next month for the next revolutionary book movie trap. And y'all have a good rest of your day or night. Land back.
Land back.